Welcome to the About This Love podcast with your host Dale and Charel. To get all the latest ATL podcast news and media, please follow About This Love on Instagram, Discord, Facebook, and YouTube. Please consider supporting the About This Love podcast today by submitting a donation via PayPal or Cash App. Click on the link below to find our podcast and social media platforms. Thank you. Now for today's episode.
How you guys doing today? You are tuned into About This Love podcast with myself, Dale, and my wife, Charel. Say what's up, what's up?
Hey.
Hope you guys had a good week. We were having a conversation off air. The conversation was, are you taking your marriage seriously? And what that looks like in its entirety, or it's in its totality, what does that look like? And I feel like for a lot of us, we come into marriage taking it pretty seriously. But I think, I think people do. It's like going to the gym. You go into the gym the first week, you're going hard. I'm not comparing marriage to going to the gym. I'm just saying, like, we all know people, if not ourselves, you start going to the gym, you start going in hard. But after a while, 4 days a week turns into 3 days a week. 3 days a week turns into 2 days a week. And for then, it's like once a week if you go any at all, at a certain point. So I feel like the majority of people come into marriage optimistic and happy and ready to start life and ready to conquer the world. But I feel like once they're in marriage or are married, the reality of it is that sometimes in most cases, we realize that we may have bitten off more than we could chew. And because of that, oftentimes people's ideas and views of marriage begins to shift, and they begin not to take it as seriously, or they just begin to just kind of go through the motions. And usually you can tell. One of the things that I look for when I see people who've been married for, I'll say 20 plus years or 15 plus years, I look to see if they still have that love spark, like if they're still in love.
What's a love spark? Is there a definition for love spark?
Nah, just something I made up. It's just what I look for. It's because I remember one time I asked a guy, I was like, I've known you for a while. I've never seen your wife kiss. I said, why is that? And he, of course, explained to me why, which I won't go into details, but that's just to give an example of something that I look for in marriage. And look, I'm not saying that if you don't kiss your spouse that you're not taking your marriage seriously. That's not what I'm saying at all.
No, you just don't have a love spark.
Yeah, basically, yeah. What you'll find is that every couple express love in a different way, and some people actually don't like a public affection. They don't like being affectionate to the spouse in front of other people.
That's public affection.
I mean, I was thinking like more like if you're at a store or whatever, but I guess you're right.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I mean, it may make people feel kind of awkward, just, but a love spark. I don't know. I'm just, you just kind of left me hanging because I wanted a whole definition. I was going to Google it and everything. Love spark.
I guess like I said, like on our last podcast, you spoke about my uncle and my aunt and how they take a trip once a month. I know when I look at them, they're both well over 60 years old. And when I look at them, like they always post it on Facebook, when they go out and they kissing and stuff. I'm just like, I look for that. It's like, you over 60 years old and you still in love with your spouse, like y'all still making good love. It's like that's what I look for versus some people, when you look at them at that age, like they don't really kiss, they don't really give hugs, they don't really go out nowhere. It's just TV and food and meals and that's it. And I guess the longer you're married, the more the dynamic of it might change. So I guess it might not look like there's a love spark, but there actually may be a love spark because people express things, people express love and affection differently. So I can't take one person's affection and say, well, you don't love your wife or you don't take your wife seriously because you don't display it the way they display it. No, that's not true. Everybody's different. So Charel, when you think about taking marriage seriously,
I'm sorry.
What?
I don't look for the love spark.
I mean, okay, Charel. I want to
Okay, I'm sorry. What's your question?
No, I mean, I'm just asking you, like, what do you look for? I mean, and again, like I said before, that's not like taking the marriage seriously because you're not affectionate, Because
Okay.
I mean, I think I'm not the most affectionate person. Would you say?
I don't know. Like, okay. I feel like you trapping me on air by asking that question because I don't know. I feel like, okay, you know what I thought about the other day? You're talking about affection. I thought about before we got married, you wrote me 2 songs. So the first song I love so much. Like I just love the song. Actually, I was going to ask if you could put it as my ringtone.
The other one was trash?
No, it wasn't trash, but like I just didn't like it as much as the first one. Like I don't know if it was the beat or
You told
because
me you love that joint. Now 5 years later, you told me you
no,
like it. You see how bad it's changed? That's a prime example of not taking your marriage seriously.
What? Man,
5 years ago, she was loving that joint. Now she married 5 years.
I had a love spark 5 years ago, I guess.
That joint was whack. That
Okay.
joint was trash.
No. But listen, no, seriously, listen. I just think that the second one, I don't know. I really love the first one because it was unexpected. And then the second one, I was just like, oh, okay. And you asked me, you were like, you don't like when I express myself through my music to you? And I was just like, no, it's not that. Ever since then, I ain't get a new song. Like, you hadn't written me no poems or nothing, but whatever.
I mean, to be honest, I've had writer's block. I haven't written anything, period.
Oh, blame the wife. Blame the wife. No. But so I think taking a marriage seriously, to me, okay, we had this conversation the other day in the car. I was like, well, when was the moment I had to think back, like when was the moment I knew that you wanted to marry me? Remember I asked you that?
Yeah.
And then you said, well, I don't know, I got to think about it. And so I was like, well, for me, I knew the moment I knew that you were serious to get married to me, or, you were serious about our relationship, is when the conversation shifted about our future. You were just like, yeah, so, are we going to pay off this debt? And, you're going to have to get on my insurance, or we're going to have to work that out. And I told you, I said, well, you know what? On the outside, listening in, it would have sounded like, oh, man, he's being very demanding. And how can he say those things? Like he wants me to change my life around. But the way you were talking, in my mind and in my heart, it just felt like, wow, he's really trying to plan for our future. Like you really wanted to plan how that's going to look like, and you wanted to talk about it. And I was like, oh, wow. Like we're talking about important things. Like when you start talking about life insurance policies and, like how we going to merge our money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Actually, hold on. Those two examples aren't really the best examples because it sounds like somebody just trying to, life insurance
on the come up.
Yeah. No. But just those things, like we're starting to talk about our future together and like what our work schedules are going to look like and how we're going to balance that. Like to me, I was just like, whoa, like he's going to take this seriously. Right. So like I said, I'm like tickled by that love spark term because, I guess back in the day, like girls would say foot pop, like, oh, when you're in love, you got a foot pop. So I think that's what it's reminding me of. But the one thing I would think when I see a couple, I'm like, yeah, they're taking their marriage seriously, is their intentionality.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because I know, like when I started looking at you as a wife, I remember a father figure to me. He asked me. He said, "Are you really? Are you not really? But are you ready to put another? Are you ready to put another before yourself?" And when he asked me that, I had to think about it. I'm like, man, like, what does that mean? And what does it look like? But I think the longer you stay married, the more you realize. Because I was telling somebody the other night, I was like, man, to be honest, I was like, man, with our last kid, I said, man, I really realized, like, the first few months, I really realized how selfish I was. I was selfish, young. I was like, I ain't want to spend no time with the baby. I ain't want to keep her. I ain't want to do nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I won't say it was more so of just like the heart behind it was selfishness as much more as the heart behind it is just like, just shock. Like, you're like, oh man, like, what do I do? Like, am I able to do this? Can I do this? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and not saying like you can't do it. It's just like, it's a shock. Like, oh my God, there's actually a kid here that I got to provide for and look after and nurture. So I just feel like that was actually like a moment, the second, third moment in time where I began to take our marriage and fatherhood seriously. But then the first part was what the guy said to me. He was like, man, are you ready to care for another? Are you ready to put somebody, are you ready to put a woman before yourself? And I think for a lot of us, that's not really the reality that a lot of women see in their marriage, is that the husband's putting their own needs aside for the wife. Actually, quite the opposite. The husband is doing what he want to do and put his needs first. Then, if I got time for you, then I'll worry about what you got going on in the kids third. So I feel like for me, the moment where I begin to take my marriage seriously is when I begin to put, you before my own needs, and to kind of come into grips with that and having to walk that out. And to be honest, I give a practical example because I know me, I'm just a very practical person. One of the things that I had to learn when we first got married, I talk real loud, I talk real loud. And Charel would be like, well, you're yelling. And I'm like, I'm not yelling. What are you talking about? So I think for me, I had to realize, oh man, even though I talk loud, and just kind of rough. Like I had to learn to talk soft and learn to kind of slow down what I'm saying and not talk so fast. So for me, that was actually kind of when I also realized that I was beginning to take my marriage serious.
That was so talking too fast and talking too loud.
No, like being considerate of what you were saying when you said I was talking too loud.
No, I get that part. Me. No, so I am asking you, but I'm just like, so that's the moment where, like for you in our marriage, when you started to take it, I guess like you start to realize like, man, this serious, like doing life together.
Just really, in a nutshell, it's just taking into consideration what your wife is saying and putting that on display, like displaying that, because oftentimes, let's keep it a hundo, people's wives or people's husbands say things to them, they just like, all right, whatever. And they do the opposite. They don't really care. And it shows in their actions they don't care. So they're like, man, whatever, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do what I do. If you don't like it, oh well.
It's interesting to me that you say that, because I think for me, it was like, I felt like on day one, or maybe not day one, it's probably like day 2 or 3, because like your brother stayed with us like the day of our wedding or the night of our wedding.
My sister did too, right?
Yeah, and so your family stayed with us.
With us? You didn't live with me?
No. Like the day after we got married, they stayed after the wedding like a day or 2.
Oh, okay.
Dang, you saying no, don't confuse me. I'm telling the story here. And so basically, like the first day that we were like to ourselves by ourselves, I remember like coming down the steps, and I sat on the couch and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, okay, so I got my pen and paper. We're finally alone. So like, what do you expect from your wife? Like, what do you expect me to do or whatever? So I felt like I was open to whatever you were saying and I was going to consider it. But then when it came to doing it, like you had asked me, so we had a couple friends at that time. Does that make sense? It was another couple who was our friends that we were like hanging out with a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so one time
they had 4 kids.
I don't know how many kids they had.
Like, I'm trying to figure out who you talking about.
You trying to put people on blast. That's what you trying to do. But no, so we hung out with them a lot of the time. And basically, it was just so funny because one day you were like, can you come home or be home by the time I get home? Like, you're hanging out with the wife all the time. Can you be home?
Okay, I got you.
And I was like, what? And so, I talked to, some of the other wives who have been married longer, and I'm just kind of like, he want me to be home. That's demanding. I don't like it. And then they were like, if your husband wants you to be home, why wouldn't you be home? Like, what do you have that's more important than you being at home? With your husband. And I was just kind of like,
I can think of a list of things.
like, like shopping, chatting it up, talking about how much I don't like my husband because he get on my nerves. So that for me, I was like, that's when I realized I wasn't taking it as serious when I started to like question you wanted to spend time with me. So that's why I say intentionality, because when I see other couples, so I guess for me, they're like the love spark signal that I'm looking for is how intentional they are with their spouse. And, that shows me that they're taking marriage seriously, because it's not intentional as in like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like there was a video on TikTok I seen a few nights ago, and this guy was
I thought Trump was getting that joint shut down, yo.
We're not going to talk about our sitting president, so.
Mr. President.
Oh, God. This is not a campaign. Anyway, the election is over. But no, so like I said, when I see couples who are intentional with one another and intentional with their time, that just shows me like that they are taking their marriage seriously, because I think I was given the example of this one, or at least I wanted to give the example of this one couple we know. The husband has a pretty solid schedule, but the wife, her schedule fluctuates because she's an entrepreneur. She runs her own business and different things pop up at different times. And I'm just like, oh, well, are you going to work this day? You're going to work that day? Da, da, da. or, how you operating things or doing things. I am an entrepreneur myself.
We are entrepreneurs.
Well, we are entrepreneurs, but you also have a 9 to 5. But either way, she was telling me that she's taking certain days off because she knows that her husband is off on those days. And because her husband is off on those days, she's not going to, schedule any clients. She's not going to work on those days. I was like, that's a no duh, kind of thing, right? That's like of course you're going to do that. That's a no brainer. But really, it's not a no brainer to people, especially when they first get married. It was a movie you and I were watching the other day. I don't know, it was around Christmas time and the spouse had lost her mother or whatever. And it was like, well, are you going to be home for Christmas? And he's like, oh, well, I got to work. Now, even though it was something, he probably was like cheating on her or whatever. But either way, like.
Probably he was.
Oh, well, they didn't go in depth to what he was doing. But either way, like it was just showing how he wasn't being considerate of his wife. And so she felt really alone and lost because it's just like, okay, I've expressed to my husband how I feel a certain way around this time of year. And so it's like he not being considerate of that. Now, I mean, there's things where our spouse aren't going to be considerate of, but that doesn't mean that they're not taking their marriage seriously. If it's really important and it's like a heart issue, like of course addressing it, but then it's just like, I don't know, it's really hard to kind of weigh out for your own marriage if your spouse is taking it seriously.
I mean, I think not sometimes, a lot of the times I feel like when your spouse is not taking something seriously. And sometimes like not taking it serious, it's not really always like I'm not taking it serious and I know that. Sometimes people do things out of ignorance, meaning that they're not really taking their marriage seriously, but as crazy and bizarre as it sounds, they're not really aware that they're not taking it that seriously. For instance, my daughter's pediatrician is a female doctor. Her husband is a stay-at-home father, whatever. So let's just say that the husband's all home all day with the kids, and when he gets home, he's like, hey, babe, I've been home with the kids all day. Can you take them for a couple hours so I get some sleep or get a moment myself? She's like, well, I've been at work all day, blah, blah, blah. No. It's like, again, at some point, you have to be considerate. Or if the wife works all day and then she goes out after she get off work to a restaurant and eat a nice meal by herself, it's like, dang, like, man, like, do you want to be married? You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
So or even if when she is off, she doesn't consider, her husband and the children, because I think they have quite a few children. So it's just getting to the point where you realize, like, listen, man, are we in this together? Or am I in this by myself? Because sometimes I feel like that can make a spouse feel like another spouse is not taking things seriously when they feel like they have to carry the bulk of the responsibilities and they have to carry the bulk of the loads. Like, it's two of us. If I wanted to carry all this weight and load by myself, I'd just stay single. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask you something since you said that. Do you think that marriage is 50-50? Like, do you think that,
Nah.
people say they want a partnership in marriage, but do you think that things will be 50-50, even split down the middle, like, okay, I get the kids and it sounds like, I guess it sounds kind of bizarre to say it because it's like everything is split down the middle. You pay these bills, I pay that bill. You keep the kids this many hours or this day and I keep them that day. Do you think that that's like possible?
I don't know. I'll say I don't know because my mind really doesn't like operate or think that way, first of all. But what I will say is when I think about 50-50 for people, most of the time I've heard people refer to that as paying bills. Yeah. Like, my wife pay half the bills. I pay half the bills, with my salary. Now, when I'm talking about like time with the kids or responsibility, I don't really think about that because to me, if I'm thinking that way, it's like, am I trying to see how much, well, my wife spent 3 hours this week by herself, so I gotta spend 3.5 hours. It's like, I don't get into that. Like, I don't, like, if you need me to keep the kids or you need time to yourself, then whatever, I'll do it. Like, I don't really think about that. Like, most of the time, like, when I get home from work, my wife would tell you, like, I wash dishes and I do laundry and I work a full-time job. I don't really be tripping. Like, I don't really care. Like, cause my thing is like, I just want it done. I don't really care, like, if she do it or if I can do it. Now, most of the time she'll get to it, but if she don't get to it, I'll just do it. I don't really care. I just don't want to sink full of dishes. I don't want like 3 and 4 dirty clothes baskets laying in the basement waiting to get washed. I just wash them while I'm playing a game or while I'm watching a movie. I don't really care. So my mind doesn't really process things that way. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just was curious about that because, You know what I thought about when I hear people say they want things to be 50-50? I'm like, it's never going to feel like it's equal, and I don't want to I don't want anyone to encourage that mindset within their marriage, because it's like it could be time and the kids 50-50. Then it'd be like, well, he bought that TV and I bought this chair. And if we were to ever divorce, then I know what I'm taking and I know what he's keeping. You know what I'm saying? Because I just feel like it's one of those keep tabs, or it's like a merit-based marriage. And I feel like we spoke about that in a previous podcast episode, where like you're just going throughout your day and you're like, okay, my husband did this, that's 5 out of 10, or my husband didn't do that, so that's 2 out of 10. And you're basing your happiness within your marriage off of if they're doing something good or in your favor or not.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that that's like a healthy mindset to take on. Like, I'm all about the mindset that you keep while you're in your marriage. I can't remember the name of the movie, but I have a movie reference for it, just like I have a song reference for everything. If you know me, you know that I have a song reference for everything. But no, so this movie reference, I felt like the marriage went sour because the wife's mindset, like before they got married, she was, the wife was like, oh, well, he tricked me, he deceived me before they got married. And so all throughout their marriage, she felt like she was deceived and she just was so unhappy. And she did things kind of like what you said with false humility. I felt like she did things with a woe is me type of attitude. And it's just kind of like, yeah, we can take on, if we're not careful, we can take on that mindset of like, oh, well, my spouse didn't do this, or my spouse, bought that, or, we could start to kind of have a running tab of like rights and wrongs, or what they purchased, didn't purchase. And it's just like, it would never be equal. It would never be equal. I don't know. Have you seen those posts or those videos, Dale, about like the moms who kind of, I guess, tally up like the list of things that they do like for the kids around the house and how much they would really be getting paid?
No, I haven't. I have not seen it.
Okay.
I know you told me about them, but I haven't seen the actual video, so there's no point of reference for me when we think about it now. I don't really think about it from that perspective. But the way I think about it is that one of the things that I said, I'm a football fan. And everybody knows on football, on a football team, on an NFL football team. Well, if you don't know, there are players who get paid $30 million a year. There's players who get paid $12 million a year. And I feel like all of them work just as hard, but each of them has a different position to play. The quarterback throws the ball. The quarterback's probably one of the most highest paid players on the team. But you have a lineman. If he don't block for the quarterback, he ain't throwing nothing. So his role is just as important as the quarterback, but he don't get as paid as much as the quarterback. So I think that one of the things that really helped me to function better in marriage and life is it's knowing your lane. It's funny because this guy at my job, he always says, find your lane and stay in it. Know your lane. I'm not saying that like in an arrogant way, like know your lane, chick, know your lane, dude. What I'm saying is like, know your lane. So I know my lane, I stay in my lane, so I don't have time to be like, well, I spent 5 hours this week or 5 hours today with the kids, so she got to give me 5 hours alone by myself. No, I mean, I come into my house and my marriage and I kind of like, where do I see, what areas do my wife need help? Or where areas do the kids need help? And I kind of just fit in where I get in as it relates to that. Now, what I did want to say is that like, when it comes to taking your marriage seriously, I feel like, one, you can't really take your marriage seriously until you actually know what it is you want from your spouse as it relates to expectations. And I feel like oftentimes people come into marriage not even like really knowing what they expect. And that's normal. That's actually pretty normal. I know some people come into marriage knowing what they want, but to be honest, what you think matters to you, oftentimes the longer you're married, you find out doesn't really matter to you. So I feel like for me, in order for me to take my marriage seriously, I needed to know what mattered to my wife and what didn't matter to her. Because that's one of the, I'll say one of the most important keys of being married and taking it seriously is that like, if your spouse feels like you know what they need, you know what they want, and you're very adamant about fulfilling those duties and staying in your lane, then to them, it may feel like you're taking the marriage seriously. But it's like, if they know you're aware of what I want, you're aware of what I need, but you don't care to do it or fulfill it, then again, you're not taking marriage very seriously. It may come off to them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely get what you're saying. I think we've had a lot of arguments about that. Like, just as far as like maybe there was a concern of yours and you thought that I wasn't, I didn't care about your feelings towards it, or vice versa. Like, I felt like I've said or expressed things to you and it wasn't received, or you didn't react, or you know what I'm saying? Like, there was just no effort put in. I mean, and that's just being honest. Like, not to say that,
it was intentional.
yeah, it was just very unintentional on both our parts at one or another part of our marriage. And so I think that just being more mindful, like I know recently meaning within the last year or so of our marriage, I think we've both come to the conclusion to just use more words of affirmation towards one another, meaning, like if you do something, just acknowledging that and saying thank you. Like, I acknowledge that you said it. Oh, actually, I got a good one. I got a good word of affirmation that we just used today. And this one was quite funny. So remember earlier today, I was listing off my list of wifely demands, and I was like, I want my tea when I get out the shower. I want my water, after that, and then I want a back rub. And so basically, I was giving off my list of demands, and I was like, oh, so he's not going to answer me. Oh, and I said, after that, I want a back rub. And so I said, oh, he's not going to answer me. So basically, when you walked to the door and you stopped, didn't even turn around, because I was making intense eye contact.
I knew you was.
And you didn't even want
to. I can feel you staring at me too, which is why I didn't look.
And so you didn't look at me. And so I wasn't going to say anything. But then you said, I just want to let you know that I heard you, but I'm ignoring you. I mean, but, just little things like that. And we were able to laugh it off. But let's say you didn't say anything to me. Like, I clearly was in a playful, joking mood, but it could have quickly went into an argument if I...
You'd have been arguing by yourself, because I wouldn't have said nothing to you.
Oh, my gosh. But I'm just saying, like...
No. I mean, yes, I understand what you're saying. Like, just like, even if you don't want to do it, just acknowledging, because it's sometimes like I'll ask her for some water or something, and she'll be like, I don't feel like doing it right now. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, some things just, it's not law in our house or in our marriage. It's just like, oh, I mean, being more honest with one another, I think that also too helps. And not, honest to like, oh, well, I'm blunt and I say whatever and you just gonna have to take it how I serve it. But, saying things out of love, like, hey, I'm really tired. I don't feel like doing it. And yeah, it might make me upset, but am I about to pack my bags and go off of that, or no?
Yeah.
We gonna stay together?
I felt like one of the biggest things we struggled with in our marriage that let me know that we wasn't taking marriage seriously is that we wouldn't, and I believe I mentioned it on our last podcast, but it's like when things really bothered us, we wouldn't say anything, or we would kind of like gloss over it. And it's like, listen, if you want to take your marriage seriously, and I mean seriously, here's what you don't realize. This is something that we had to find out the hard way. Let's say something is bothering you, say 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turns into 2 months. By the end of that second month, going into the third month, you're really, really angry, really, really bitter, really, really frustrated. And that usually comes out in a way of fits of rage. But all of that could have been avoided. Because I remember sometimes me and my wife, like, when we used to get into arguments, like really, really heated arguments, I'm like, yo, why didn't you just tell me that then? Like, why we got to do all this? Or why we got to go through all this? If 2 months ago you felt that way, why didn't you just tell me 2 months ago? Well, I ain't want to. It's like, so you was mad for 2 months, and it ended up, in a big argument when you could have just told me 2 months ago. Even if I ain't do it, at least I would have. At least I would have knew. Like, at least I would have. At least I would have knew. You know what I'm saying?
I would have knowingly not did something.
But sometimes, and tell me if I'm wrong. Even if I don't do it, but doesn't it still bring you some type of relief knowing that you told me or got it off your chest? Even if I don't do it, yes or no?
Not in all situations, no.
I mean, just answer the question.
I answered the question. You don't like my answer.
You're being too vague. Like, not in all situations, but
you just don't like my answer.
For the most part, Charel. For the most part.
For the most part, no. I can't give a blanketed answer.
She's not being honest.
Don't shake your head.
She's not being honest right now.
I am being honest.
You're not being honest.
No, I am. Let me tell you why.
Because you always tell me you don't give me time to tell you, and you don't listen. It's like, well, so which one is it? Either you don't want to tell me, or I'll give you time. Like, it can't be both.
No, and this is the thing. Sometimes you don't want to be like, as a wife, you don't want to be the nagging wife. So you don't want to like every single little thing. Like we could nitpick, and it's just almost like I got to sit back and weigh out. Do I really care about this? Is this really something that, that's weighing on me?
2 months later.
No, but then, it just seemed like when you start weighing things out and then they just, pushing the button or irritating you even more in that area, then it's like, nah, we're going to need to talk about it. But I need to bring up from 2 months ago when it started. Don't think I didn't note that, But so no, I don't think that it always makes a difference, but it did make me think about one argument we had, and I'm not going to disclose the argument, just because that's not any of y'all business. But what I did want to say was something you said to me that stood out. You were saying like, why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? If you love me, you would have given me a fair chance. And I was like, what does that mean? Right? But basically what you were saying was that, if you love me, you would tell me because you would want to work through it with me, like work through the issue with me instead of just going on as if nothing was wrong. And I mean, I was sitting on that for a while because I was just like, yeah, I guess like, like I have an issue. And instead of never saying anything ever, I care about our relationship. I mean, it goes back to like, is the offense like worth more than your relationship? Do you want to hold on to your offense, what a person did to offend you? Do you want to hold on to that and jeopardize your relationship with them? Like what has the more weight to it, the offense or your relationship? And if it's your relationship, then you're going to be willing to work through it. But if it's the offense, then, just you're going to be willing to part ways.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, and I know. Now that we've been married, February be going on 5 years, I feel like we've grown in a lot of areas. And I feel like a lot of the things that, because like, I ain't gonna lie, like when we first got married, like I feel like we both just nitpick about everything. And I mean, and you realize that's just the growing pains of the beginning of marriage. You just nitpick about everything. And then one of my father figure said to me one time, he was him and his wife were talking to me and Charel, and he was like, man, you're gonna have to choose like what battles to fight. He said, because everything ain't worth an argument. He was like, trust me. He was like, the longer you stay married, he was like, you'll find that out real fast. He was like, just pick and choose what you want to argue about. He said everything is not worth an argument. And he was like, I know when your first few years of marriage, you got energy to argue about everything. He said, but after a while, that joint get draining. So I think after a while, it's like, you come in the house, you be like, this ninja. You be like, you know what, man, I don't even care. I don't even care, because it's like, even if I say something about it, it's gonna start an argument. And I don't really feel like arguing about it because it's not really a big deal. But it's like, it's not really a big deal, but it bothers me because I already had a bad day at work. So if I say something about it, it can make it bigger than what it really is. So I just choose not to say anything about it. Does that make sense?
You know what it sounds like to me, Dale?
What?
Sound like you're not taking your marriage seriously. No. I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you. But no, I definitely get what you're saying. I mean, it was a time we had an argument about the trash can. And it was something so small, but it was the trash can. And I was sitting there like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I don't even care. Like I don't even care that you're upset, but you were trying to stand your ground about this daggone trash can. And I was like, I don't care about the trash can. Like, why are we arguing about this?
You don't care so much that you had to do with the trash can what you had to do with it, right? That's how much you didn't care.
No.
So really you did care.
No. If I did care, we would still probably be arguing and not even talking. And then it would have blown up to something bigger, but it was a trash can. And I was like, oh, I'm not about to argue with him over no daggone trash can. Like, so, I mean, that's how petty, like, you can get with some things. And so it's like, once again, like I said, do you take your offense more seriously? Like, is that more important to you than the relationship? And it's like, it goes back to like the overarching theme that we've been projecting on this episode and throughout the conversation. It's just like, you got to be considerate of one another. You got to be intentional. And it's like, well, I intentionally do not want to argue with you about it, not out of in a avoidance way or thing, but just, I don't care.
It's not worth the energy.
It's not worth it. Like, does it, is it going to make me look at you any differently? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, do we have to work through it? Is it a heart issue? Is it going to make our marriage go down the drain if I don't do something with this trash can? Probably not. So, yeah.
So just to highlight a few points about, how you know if you're taking your marriage seriously. Again, just when you get to the point in your marriage where you really consider the heart of your spouse and, for your wives, if something that your husband does or doesn't like, and you really consider that, and for the husbands, your wife may like a particular thing or don't like a particular thing, and you consider that and don't do it, or you do it. That's really how you know when you're taking your marriage seriously. When you just get to a point where you're actually just considerate of the other person, and you think about them more, or you think of them before you think of yourself. That's really how you know when you've come into the realm of taking your marriage seriously. So thank you guys again for today, for listening to the conversation. We always appreciate the support that you guys give us. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for tuning into today's podcast episode. Be sure to follow and share your thoughts as we continue the conversation on About This Love's Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel. Join the About This Love community on Discord. The ATL podcast episodes can be found on all podcast streaming platforms. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please consider submitting a donation via PayPal or Cash App to keep our podcast going. Click on the link below to find our podcast and social media platforms. Thank you. Until next time, peace.